All right, Alisha, welcome to the show. I'm super excited. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you since I read about what you're doing and who you work with. I had read an article that really stopped me based on what I read. Um, and I think the thing that really stood out to me was you called what's happening in businesses right now is the war on clients. And I wanted to start there. What made you name it that way? And like where does that naming come from?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Artie. I'm happy to be here. The war on clients is real, and it's already started. Just like there's been a war on good talent the last number of years, and it's hard to find good talent, and then people are paying really high prices for good talent nowadays. We're now entering the war on clients, and the reason is the age of AI is making the competition so much more accessible. Where you can spin up a company overnight. Now, whether your product's going to be good or not, that's debatable, but AI really does allow us to spin stuff up quicker and saturate markets faster. And because of that, there is a war on clients. Why should somebody stay with you and your service and your product and not just move to the next one? And so client retention, which is, traditionally been a very unsexy problem, in my eyes is going to become one of the most important topics.
Yeah. And I want to double click on something you said. It's so easy to spin up a new company overnight, right? Building is easy. The moat is distribution then. If anybody can build overnight, how do you go after distribution? That's a really, really good point. How did you choose that problem though? Like of all the things you could have built, why this?
Yeah, that's the golden question right now I keep getting, especially coming from coffee to code. And the reason I've chosen this problem, like I said, it's not the funnest problem, it's not the coolest problem out there. But it is an important problem, and I solved it first for my last company. And so at Road Coffee, that company's 11 years old now, and coffee is one of the most saturated markets in the world. And it was through almost losing our biggest client at the time. 50% bigger than any of our other clients. Things were going so well. And then I got one of those dreaded emails, decided to go in a different direction. And it was through that I realized I had to become a retention expert in order to build a successful company in that market. There was no other way. And so that's exactly what I did. I started reading all the books, listening to podcasts, hiring coaches, and I figured out how to become a retention expert. And then we were able to have people drinking the same coffee for 7, 8, 9 years, which is not, an easy thing. And so I did it first there, built the system around it there, and then saw a lot of other founders and businesses that were struggling with the same problem.
Of course. I think one of the things that stands out to me is how, as business owners, we always chase the next client. But wouldn't it be cool to spend more time retaining what you already have? And I just love that that's the problem you're solving right now. It's how do you compound what you're building by keeping the same customers and increasing their LTV at some point rather than just chasing new ones. It's not a new concept, but I love the idea of bringing in AI in doing that. So at this point, I want you to talk about the product. How does your Latch fixes that problem?
So Latch is really cool. We took how we were doing this at Road, this very manual process that would take, hours and hours of my time, and then I learned to buy back my time, of course. So my team started executing on it. And that's when I started to figure out what would become Latch. And what Latch really is AI native client intelligence for your team. It's kind of like having a whole customer success team in your back pocket without the overhead. So you connect to Latch through, whatever tools you're using. It could be your CRM, your Stripe, HubSpot. It could be a ticketing system like Freshdesk or Intercom, your email, your calendar, wherever your client data lies. And I'm sure you've seen this working with clients over the years. Typically, that data is fragmented in many places. So, what Latch does is it takes all the fragmented data, it brings it together, it runs it through our Latch system. And then what we're doing is we're telling you what category your clients are at, and there's four main categories: at risk, slipping, stable, and expansion ready. And the thing that most founders get wrong is two of those categories are actually very time sensitive. You really got to get the people that are slipping in that window or else they move to the red. And the same thing with expansion ready. A lot of times people just like ask for that upgrade or referral or subscription renewal, but they ask at the wrong time. And so Latch is monitoring your client base, telling you where they're at. And then what's cool is it gives you the exact messaging to send that specific client. So it's hyper personalized, no more automated messages, no more AI schlop. It's hyper specific to what that client needs to hear that day.
Yeah, and that's pretty powerful. I think what stood out to me is that one of your clients, did they get more than 500,000 in missed revenue? I want you to talk about that story because that blew my mind. I'm sure when the listeners are listening to this, I want you to walk them through what that case study was.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm chuckling because now we've noticed through onboarding a number of clients, it's more than one that has been leaving over $500,000 on the table. And with a background in finance, I'm sure you're like, wow, like how is this happening? But
Yeah.
what we're seeing, and I'll use the one case study in particular I know you're talking about is we onboarded the client, we connected to their tools, and we ran their last year through the Latch system just to get a baseline and really understand what our starting point was going to be at for them.
Hmm.
And it became really evident to us quickly that they were leaving like massive amounts of money on the table, and it was over 500K. For another client it was over 650K in one quarter. And so what Latch is doing for these clients is we're bridging the gap where those clients and where that revenue is falling through, and we're catching them before they're even at risk so that they have an opportunity to save the client and get in front of it instead of being reactionary after they've already lost the client.
Absolutely. And I resonate with that so much because we recently ran an AI diagnostics for one of the big companies local in Colorado. It's a big organization, around 200 headcount. Their revenue leader has a goal of 12 million this year. And then one of the workflows we audited for them, it's easily leaking close to 500K a year. And then when we fix that with the signals that we're able to capture through email marketing events that these clients slash customers go to, you get all of that and you create a unified profile. The profile gets one score. And based on that score, you say it's a low risk, medium risk, high risk. We're building that right now. And it's so interesting to me that in this age of AI, 2026, when the leaders sit down, they don't challenge how they are doing things today. And I'm sure you see this more than I do, because I think your tool is specifically targeting SMBs, right? Am I right? Yes?
Yeah, SMBs and some smaller enterprise.
Yeah. And if you do that, I'm sure you get a lot of resistance on AI, challenging how things happen today versus how you redesign them as AI first. And hopefully the industries will get there, but it seems like everybody is doing AI, but not really. And that's where tools like what you're building is actually, it brings light to those processes, is how they are running today versus where they could be in this age and DNA of technology.
Yeah. That's interesting because sometimes I'm still a little unsure of how many people are actually leveraging AI. Because of my circle and the communities I'm in, I'm around a lot of people that are focused on that, maybe similar to you. But then sometimes I talk to someone that I meet, in my city or, just a different kind of business owner, and they're very timid and have a lot of hesitation around implementing AI in their business. And so I think there's still a long ways to go for businesses to truly adapt and integrate AI into their business in a way where it is buying back their time and it is making things more efficient and more profitable.
Yeah. And I want to double click on something you said. they are timid about the adoption, right? What is, if you don't mind sharing, what is the number one friction you get or objection, you could call it, when you reach out to these business owners and talk about the product? What is the number one objection you hear from them?
I think they're, like, scared of the unknowns of, like, well, will it actually work? Or what if they get my like, the AI gets it wrong? And then after that, honestly, I think the most part is, like, people don't wanna change. They, like, have something that's working, and they're like, "Well, this is working pretty good." And it's like, well, if it was working pretty good, you wouldn't have $500,000 sitting on the table, right? So I think that's the hard part. And then if I'm being honest with you, I think like one of the big things I've been picking up on and noticing that I wasn't expecting is there's this element of ego. And I don't like I'm a business owner, I'm a founder, so I get it, but it's almost like we don't want to admit we might not be doing a great job in this area. And so it's like, "Oh, it's fine. It's better to ignore it. It's better to ignore the leak in the basement than fix it and become more profitable." And so I think there's a lot of businesses out there, if they just, were okay with, like, not being perfect and, like, having an area of growth in their business, it would benefit them so much, and the money in the bank account at the end of the year would look significantly higher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I 100% agree with that. I think a lot of this also comes from running a business in general. What are the mindset beliefs that you go through? And this is actually a good segue for the next question that I have for you. We have, most of people listening to this don't know, Alisha and I have, we're connected through a common source, and his name is Dan Martell. Alisha started with his coaching, and we're still both in Dan's elite coaching program. So Alicia, you are not you don't just have Dan as your coach, you also have him as a partner in what you're building and what you're doing. So I want to touch on that. You work with Dan Martell daily, right? Having stayed in his coaching program for myself for close to 2 years now, his whole philosophy, I think, that pulled most of us in was buy back your time. And how do you scale businesses? Because that's what he's done for the last 20, 25 years. What is it like working with Dan?
I think this might surprise you, or like maybe it doesn't surprise you, but he's really the same person all the way through. He's the same guy on his YouTube videos as he is in the coaching calls, as he is in real life. And I think that's refreshing. I think a lot of times you meet people in real life and they're a different person, or they have this like persona on their social media, but Dan really is just the same guy all the way through. And that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that's what draws all of us to him. And I appreciate that too, because it's just every time you get on a coaching call with him, it's a big learning opportunity every single time. And the type of energy that he brings in person on coaching calls is just very contagious. So you have built businesses before. Now you're building one with Dan. How has working with him changed your how you think about business, how you think about distribution, how you think about building a product in general?
No small plans. Yeah, he likes to say that. He has it up in his office, and it's really how he operates. What's cool about Dan is like he doesn't have to be building companies still. Like he wants to, and he works really hard, and so he expects that of all the people he works with. And what's I've definitely learned is when you hit a roadblock, move through it faster. So I've always been a big visionary, a big dreamer, and have had big plans. I think what working with Dan has showed me is you can move faster than than you think you can, and a lot of times it comes back to what are you pretending not to know? And you may have heard him say that before, but it's definitely something that I feel very accountable to, even though he's never told me that directly. I feel that sentence is often in my head every time I hit a roadblock where I'm like, "I don't think I can do this. I don't know how to get past this." It's like, "What are you pretending not to know?" Or realizing that a lot of times it just takes the reps. So, like, I don't know about you, but I know for me in the past as a founder, like, I've tried something, and then if it didn't work, I was just kinda like, "Okay, I don't think this works. We need to pivot." Whereas I think recently I'm really realizing, do we need to pivot or do we actually just need to like get the reps in and figure it out? And so I think one of the biggest things that's been an unlock for me is learning how to truly focus. I thought I was focused before, but I think I was a bit wrong.
That's awesome. I think that's what separates from building a business without a coach or partner like him versus with someone like him who's done this for many, many years, right? I've seen your content. I still see to this day, and I truly believe in what you're building. And I think one of Dan's philosophy is show the work that you're doing, and that's what draws your tribe in. How long have you been building businesses before you met Dan?
Just under a decade.
Under a decade?
Yeah, and I've probably learned more in the last couple of years than the, like, previous 9.
Yeah. And what inside you speaks for you to keep building businesses or do or build a business in the first place at all?
I love solving complex problems. I'm a high impact entrepreneur. So, like, my background's in international development. I spent 7 years doing that before I started my entrepreneurial journey. And then my coffee company, Road Coffee, was high impact. We worked with coffee farmers around the world, creating streamlined supply chains, cutting out the unnecessary middlemen to make them more profitable. Started a microloan program back in 2019 to help move coffee farmers out of poverty into independence and freedom. So I've always been a very impact driven person. And I believe that business is a great way to solve problems, especially coming from the nonprofit background. I kept seeing a lot of the same problems not being solved, and it would frustrate me. And there's so much fundraising on that side. And don't get me wrong, I think fundraising is really important.
Yeah.
Donating to charity is really important. I also saw, though, other ways to solve those problems, and business is often the solution. And so, for me, a big part of building wealth and building companies is so that I can make more of an impact.
Absolutely. And I love that perspective. For anybody who's building or maybe even thinking about starting a new business right now or are in the middle of a mess and they don't know where to go. Having done that for over a decade, if you could just give them one advice, what would that be?
If they haven't started, it would be like, just start it. Stop putting it off, or you're going to be in the same place 10 years from now wishing you had started. And if you're in it, keep going. I've seen so many businesses come and go over the last decade, and I've seen a lot of businesses stick around. And honestly, I think the ones that remain successful are the ones that persevere and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, solving one problem at a time and not giving up.
Yeah. And I love that because I think all of us, when we had started, I'm roughly 3 years into my journey. And I think the first ceiling I had to break for myself is that I have to have all the answers right now, or I'm doing something wrong. It's such a fallacy. Once you accept the fact that there are going to be unknowns every single day, and all you have to do is just like you said, very appropriately, one foot in front of the other, and then you'll figure it out. As long as you're seeking the right thing, the answers will come to you. I've seen your content. How has content shaped your journey?
I think I've learned, at least recently, that it's good to share more about what you're doing because it inspires other people. It helps, people that might be stuck and might need just to see that other people are stepping out and taking the risks that they might need to. And I think it's built my confidence. So I've always come off as a very confident person. I don't think people that don't know me that well probably don't know that I've struggled with confidence over the years because I have a big personality. I can hide behind my bravada. But, like, I think talking to the camera and putting out more content is forced me to figure out how to come across more authentic and not hide. And it's been a journey. And I can tell when I watch some of my content, I'm like, I was hiding in that video versus being vulnerable. But I'd say I'm still on that journey, and I'm still learning how to share myself with others.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What does a typical day in your life looks like as you're building a new company, new product? How do you spend most of your day?
I'm an early riser now. I never used to be, but I like to wake up early now and crush the day. So I either start with a workout in the morning, If I have weight training, I started weight training last fall. It changed my life. Also helped build my confidence in a different way, which was kind of cool. And then starting a new company, I haven't been perfect at this. There are days that I skip it and then I regret it. But I like to spend the morning taking some time to just get quiet, reflect on my goals, my annual goals, look at how I'm doing in my 5 tank. I call it the 5 tank framework that I created. Do you want to hear about it?
I would love to.
Okay, so I think everybody has these 5 tanks: emotional, mental, spiritual, relational, and physical. And the way we fill them up can look different, depending on our culture, how we were raised, our personality. But when they're filled, we're usually in the pocket. We're, thriving, we're full of life, and we're working and living out a flow state. But when they're low is usually when our anxiety is high and we're blowing up our relationships unnecessarily and we're just, struggling and on a spiral down. I like to fill those out every morning. I draw in my journal the 5 tanks and I give myself a 1 out of 10. And then I ask myself, what do I need that day to move one of those tanks higher? And that's been game changing for me. I used to live on burnout on repeat, and then I had to figure out a better way to do entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And I totally resonate with you. And I think what I want to double click on, you said burnout and when the tanks are not full. So on those days when you feel like a particular tank is not full, I always say if you are an entrepreneur, you just have to get comfortable with the idea that there is going to be more bad days than good days. And as long as you don't give up on those bad days, you're going to do just fine. How do you deal with those days?
I think I've gotten better at it over the years. But hard days are hard, and the interesting part is I would say I don't have bad days anymore. I have bad moments. So my
Mhm.
emotional capacity when I was, younger in my journey is if I had a bad moment, it would ruin my whole day. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to regulate, wind it back and categorize it or, pause it till later to an appropriate time to deal with that emotion. I would just shove it down until either, I got super down or I got really frustrated. At some point it's going to come out. And I think what's happened over the years is that, I've put a lot of work into personal development. I see an amazing counselor on a regular basis because I think entrepreneurship's hard and it's just, I've built it into part of my regular health routine. And I spend a lot of time just working on me. And I'm a big believer that our internal world creates our external world. So it's been a journey for me, but it's been really fun to see where I used to be even 5 years ago versus now.
I love that so much. There's one thing I keep really close to my heart, and it's if you're not embarrassed by the version of yourself that existed a year ago, you're not growing.
That is so good. I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, I go back to my videos all the time. I also go back to how I used to react, something like that you touched a few seconds ago, right?
Yeah.
The person you used to be, the type of content you used to consume, things that used to give you that adrenaline, but they don't anymore because you're just so stable because you've figured a few things out, right? So I truly, truly believe in what you just said. Okay. So I'm a lot of my audience, especially on YouTube, where this pod is going to go, and we're still building our audience, but a lot of on YouTube, they are people who are aspiring to start a business or they're already running one, but they're in the building phase and they're struggling with distribution. Having done this work with Latch, where are you in your journey of distribution? If you don't mind sharing a couple of nuggets on anybody, if you could help in, because truly in 2026, distribution is the moat, you guys. Building is not, as Alisha said. Where would you like them to focus in if they are trying to crack distribution right now?
That's a great point, Artie. I would say I'd focus on a couple areas. First, it starts with the product. You have to have a good product. I think that alone will help people stand out because there's going to be so much random crap out there. If you have a good product, you have a good service, like someone like you, like you're absolutely crushing it and I think it's hard to replace someone like you. So it starts with the product or service. Then, as far as distribution, I think getting your story out there, like media and content, is a good one. I'm also big on old school methods. So, like picking up the phone. I called someone the other day. Get that, you're gonna laugh at this. I had a sales call lined up, and the person no showed me, but I had their phone number, so I FaceTime them. I straight up FaceTime them, and they picked up and they were like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey, we had a sales call. I just thought I'd, try and catch you here." And then we ended up having, like a full on call. And so that was a bit out of the box. And that's, I don't know if I would have done that a year ago, but I'm around different people now and being challenged in different ways. And so I ended up doing that, and we had a great conversation. And they're really like, they want to work with us, and we're just evaluating to make sure it's a good fit, for us on our side. But I would say start with the things that don't scale and then move to the things that scale. So something like,
I love that.
right?
Yes, clearly. I love that. And I think in the age of AI, everybody just jumps on AI by default. But if the efforts where you're sprinkling your energy, if it's not worked manually, it's definitely not going to work with automation or AI. I love that. I'm so glad you said that.
And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I swung in the other direction first, and it wasn't working the way I thought, and I had to come back to that. So I'm
Yeah.
recently relearning this lesson.
Absolutely. And I think some of my best connections have come through just sending a cold DM, but written by me on LinkedIn, manual, hitting the button, and they saw it. And 30 minutes later, they just sent me their phone number and they said, your profile is different. I typically don't connect with anybody, but here's my number, call me. And that's I'm not using automation. There's no 10,000 emails going out every day, but that's one single connection was worth probably the biggest contract we're hoping to close. So, guys, manual and things that don't scale, they absolutely do work.
And that's amazing. I think, obviously this is a great representation of like the person coming through. And it's not
Yeah.
just like an AI schlop automated message that the sniff test, you know? It passes the sniff test.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. Yes. So Alicia, one last question. What is how has your because we're talking about connecting with people and doing things that don't scale. One of the big pieces of things we're learning in elite community and in general being an entrepreneur and trying to build these kick-ass big businesses. What have you learned about networking in the past 1-2 years of building Latch that has shifted your perspective on how you see people, how you create those H2H connections? Where I want you to put a little bit of highlight on that because I think most people who are building products in the age of AI, because it's so easy to sit in your basement and build something new, launch another feature that nobody has asked for or are going to care for. How do you see networking now?
I think networking is just as important as it's always been. I mean, the classic saying, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. I think what's really important is listening to what the client actually wants. And you just touched on that, not sitting in your basement designing a feature nobody asked for, but actually talking to your clients, talking to potential clients, and listening and learning from them. And sometimes they might not always know what they want, right? When the Model T was coming around, if you would have asked someone what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Not a car. So sometimes it's not one for one, but
Yeah.
if you sit down and ask that same person more questions and understand, okay, well, are you trying to get to your destination faster and learn more about what their real goals are? That's where I think innovation and AI can be magical, but there's no point in building something nobody wants, which is a lot of AI products right now.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love that. I think we could keep talking for another hour. I do want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
We need to hang out more, but before I let you go, you were building a coffee company and now you're building a SaaS. How has it been different?
It's been awesome. It's been incredibly challenging because I'm not just building SaaS, I'm building in AI with AI but the tech changes so fast. So if I was building in SaaS like 5, 10 years ago, it would have been a different experience. But right now, even the people in tech are learning incredibly fast just to keep up. And so it's been challenging. It's also been incredible. And the community I'm in is all in all the time. So that's been very helpful. And it's exciting and it's scary and it takes an incredible amount of work. I think there's a bit of a lie out there right now that, oh, if you're doing AI, like AI can do it all and sit back, put your hands up and have a glass of wine while AI does all of it. I think that's total BS. You still have to build the agents and the system and train it. It's not as easy, I think, as everybody thinks it is, but that's okay too. Like, that's part of the journey.
Absolutely. Alicia, if people were to connect with you and find more about Latch, where can they find you? How can they connect?
Check out the website, yourlatch.com. You can apply for our waitlist, and if you're a good fit, we'll reach out to see if we can bump you up the waitlist. And I'm always on Instagram at Alisha Esmail and on LinkedIn. So drop me a DM. And you know what, Artie? I'll actually, anyone that's listening, if they want to figure out where their churn is at, if they're unsure how they're doing in that area, they can send me a DM and I will send them free churn scorecard so they can kind of get an idea of where their starting point might be.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Alicia. It's been such a wonderful conversation. Like I said, we could probably keep talking for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to hang out in Kelowna very soon in July when we get there. So I'm really looking forward to that. But thank you for being the amazing guest that you are. And we'll see you again very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.